Hello and welcome. This is going to be in addition to Path of the Empress Step 16, where we're focusing on the Tower card theme. And what I want to talk about is understanding triggers and learning to face embracing them. And now, triggers, as far as I've been able to tell, it originates from those that are dealing with like PTSD and CPTSD. And often but it's become a more mainstream colloquial term for any time that something triggers you, like it hits you emotionally and causes a reaction. It could be an angry reaction, it could be a sad reaction, it could be a confused reaction. Anything that, like, if I was to say to you, you're a mean person, and you were to feel a visceral response to that, like, if you didn't have any triggers to it, which you really shouldn't, because I don't know you, and I mean, you're probably getting to know me, and you know that I don't I'm not the type of person to do that. But if you were to feel any sort of reaction to that, like anger, like, I'm not mean, what are you talking about? That's a trigger. Or if you're to feel sad and go, a lot of people, they misrepresent me and they make me out to be the villain. Like, think about times that other people have said something to you that caused a visceral reaction, either anger or sadness. It's easy enough to think about interactions that you have with your twin. Um, one of my DM's favorite things to do for a while. I won't say favorite, it's more of a practiced pain cycle than a favorite thing, but I like to be playful with it. So his favorite thing to do would be to call me controlling. Now, as as a earth sign dominant feminine, that has been a challenge for me because I can be controlling. I can be a bit of a bully, especially when I am triggered. And there's also been big contrast because most of his karmics and those that came before me and the one that he's been wrapped in a situationship with have all been very controlling, and to an extreme level. And so his big fear, his big shadows are being controlled. Ironically, he placed himself back in a situation where he is controlled in very unhealthy ways because he feared that I would become the same if he allowed himself to be vulnerable and released control and trusted that I wasn't going to do that. And that triggered my shadows. And I did become very controlling near the end. And then it resulted in me releasing him because I didn't want to be that kind of person. I didn't want to be that kind of feminine. Now, oh, I guess it's starting to rain. See, here comes the rain again. Um, that's not even the way that that song goes, but whatever. So it's important, especially if you're choosing a twin flame journey, because it's about triggering, and that triggering provides contrast. And that triggering is not just going to come from your twin. And even if you're not choosing a twin flame journey, triggering is going to happen. Now, most of us, when we are triggered, we automatically just go, "Oh, I don't want to deal with that." We might fight in the moment, we might run. It often triggers fight or flight. That's where the basis of it comes from. Or it may trigger thoughts about how our family treated us or childhood wounds or things of that nature, and we don't want to sit with those feelings. A lot of us we were groomed to believe that anger is an inappropriate reaction, or vulnerability, crying, tears, frustration, things like that, that these are bad emotional experiences. They're really not. They're a part of the human spectrum of emotions. And when we experience them from an emotionally secure place, they aren't triggers. They are indicators of their contrast. They're moments for us to go, how do I feel about that? Do I want to get in alignment with that energy, or do I want to say no, I have a boundary there, and how thick do I want that boundary? And you know to use it as a tool of growth rather than a tool of avoidance. And what I see oftentimes, both for, well, what I've seen in myself, but what I see often with those that I coach, and that I see in, like, in other readers and coaches rooms when they're doing live feeds and things like that, and in various groups, is that a lot of times we will interact with our twins from a very triggered space, and we then reciprocate that reactivity. And it's based on our attachment traumas and various things we've gone through in our lives. But like, say your twin isn't talking to you, does that piss you off? Well, that's a trigger. Or does it make you feel sad, like you're not worthy, like you're not being chosen? That's a trigger. Are you feeling like your twin running away and getting in a karmic situationship with someone else is about a lack of value on your end, or that it makes them immature or stupid or narcissistic or mean? Those are triggers, and those are shadows that, like, they're right there in front of you. But a lot of us don't see that. And especially in terms of like divine feminines, we're often told that, like, if somebody, like, if you're with a masculine and they are flirting with other people, that you need to be like, oh hell no, you're not going to do that, you're not going to treat me that way, and I'm going to put up really really tough boundaries. I'm not saying let anybody treat you that way, but when that happens, it is an opportunity for growth, it is an opportunity for healing. Because yes, you don't want somebody, like, well, let me rephrase. If you're okay with polyamory and things like that, then you simply want to make sure that everybody has informed consent and that it's not happening in a toxic way. But if you practice monogamy, and a lot of twins usually do, it's a part of the, it's sometimes it's part of the connection to feel like you want to be each other's one and only. That's not always true, but I've seen that it is true more often than not in the twin flame journey. And if you want that, in order to have a healthy relationship with your twin, you need to make sure that you're facing your insecurities. And a lot of times, divine feminine or not, we still have our own karmic feminine energy where we experience a visceral reaction anytime that they are communicating with another feminine, whether it's in their soul tribe or karmic, or whether it's part of their family or anything. Like, we, between movies and the last few generations and how things were depending on the area you went to school in, like, feminines can be very territorial and be very, we're always going like, what is their motivation, what are they doing this for? And or if our masculines are giving more attention to somebody else than they are to us, we start to go, we start to question our value or wonder if they're a threat or things like that. In order to have a healthy relationship in general, whether twin flame or not, you need to be able to feel comfortable with your masculine having relationships with whomever. And that doesn't mean that you just let them do whatever they want or that you allow infidelity, but it does mean facing, for one thing, the fact that most people get into relationships and never talk in the very beginning and negotiate what it is that they think monogamy is or polyamory is or anything. Like, we just kind of assume that each other knows, and sometimes that's true, but you could get into a relationship with somebody who actually believes that monogamish dynamics is the same thing as monogamy, and they're two separate things. They're relatable. They can, one, they can flow in and out from each other. But like, if you consider flirtation with somebody else to be a big no-no when you're in a monogamous relationship with someone, and your twin believes that a little flirtation is harmless as long as they're not inviting in someone else into the relationship, but neither one of you talked about it, you're going to keep triggering each other on that. And it's perfectly understandable that both of you gets upset about either one having the other opinions and not talking about it. The other thing is, too, there's no reason why a masculine can't have feminine friends. There's no reason why a feminine cannot have masculine friends. But it's also valid to look at, are these genuinely friends? Are they people that you have a sexual interest in? Have you had a history of interacting with these people in a way that would like, if it was being done to you, would you feel violated in your relationship? Like, look at those things and get to the point to where you don't, like, there's no more win-lose. There's no more competition in it, because no healthy, secure union includes either twin feeling uber threatened by every, person of their twin's same gender coming in and interacting. That creates karmic energy that pulls in, like attracts like. So if you are feeling insecure when, say, your masculine goes to work and they have an attractive coworker there that you are constantly worried about, are they flirting with them, do they do something better than you, and if you're not giving your masculine a certain amount of attention, that they're going to go give more interest to them. Or if your masculine has exes around, like there a lot of times those exes will be trying to do something, but it's only going to create more triggers and more problems in your union if you feel threatened by them, or if you get controlling and you're like, you can't see them, or it's not right to see them. No, if they're still interacting with your DM and your DM is still interacting with them, there are lessons that they need to learn together. And your choice is pretty much either you can say, okay, DM, you still got some stuff to work out with these karmics. So we're going to have the illusion of separation. I'm going to work on me. I'm going to let you work that stuff out. And when you're done, I'll be here. Or you can recognize that life is a spectrum of experiences and there's no competition to you. If this is really your twin flame and not a karmic for you, they're not going to go to someone else as long as you have faced your shadow work and you're not worried about it. Yeah, they might interact with people. There might be some plot twists in life. Somebody might do something, but it doesn't mean that you're not being chosen. And there's no reason for you to worry about anybody being a threat to you, especially when you're working on healing and looking at your relationships as a cherry on top to your life, not the main course, not all three meals of the day. Like you should be your own main course. Your life should be your sustenance and your fulfillment and your union and any relationships in it being the cherry on top, the whipped cream, the sprinkles, the additions, like, the ice cream or the fudge sundae is delicious and good enough on its own. It's just made better when you add the cherry on top and the sprinkles on top, but you don't need them. In fact, a lot of times you choose them. I'm sorry, I got hair in my mouth. A lot of times you choose not to have them because you don't need all that extra sugar. And there might be times that you decide that you want some solitude. If you are not comfortable with your partner wanting some solitude or having some solitude, then you're not going to get it either. And if you want to be able to have friendships with anybody and connections with anybody and be trusted, you have to be willing to give that. And these are pretty common triggers. So is fears of abandonment. If your twin ghosts you, I mean, if you feel triggered by that, if you feel worried, like if they've not talked to you for months, it's very likely that it's because you're not working on your triggers in that way. Why are you worried if they're gone? What if they're gone for a couple of years? Is that going to change how you feel about yourself? Is that going to change how you feel about love? A lot of times the answer is yes, and at first we think that it will, but you're being faced with this experience of the illusion of separation to such an extreme degree so that you can choose yourself and you can work on your triggers. And when a trigger comes in, the most effective thing that I've found is one, let yourself experience what you experience in that moment. A lot of times you can't at first control the trigger, but what you can do is decide how you are going to respond to it after you get out of that moment. So say that your DM says something that triggers you, like well, sure, let's say they call you controlling and you've actually been working a lot on releasing control, but you don't like being told that you're doing something that you're not doing, or you see that it's actually them who is being controlling and it pisses you off because you're like, I'm not being controlling at all. You're the one being controlling. Why are you saying that? And you go off on that. Like, first of all, let yourself feel that. My suggestion is write it down in your journal or do a voice memo of it or talk to a friend that you know can hold space for you without like building momentum and that being like, yeah, they're so horrible. You should do this thing back to them. You want somebody who's just going to listen and be like, you're absurdly adorable when you're caught in your ego. That kind of friend. And let yourself feel it. And then, like, look at how far back does that go? How deep does that trigger go? Have you had multiple relationships where you've been called controlling? Have you had, was that an issue when you were a kid? Is it something that you see that one of your parents was constantly accused of or grandparents? Is it like, what is it about being accused of being controlling that triggers you, that creates such a visceral response? when you can look at that, you can then go in intentionally and say, you know what, Spirit, I want to work on healing that and releasing that. And then you can actually call and say, you know what, I want an experience where my twin or somebody else calls me controlling again so I can see where I'm at. When they call me, oh, okay, I still have a little response. It still hurts a little bit, but it's not the same. Okay, so why do I still feel that way? What is it about that? Is it now because I recognize that it's a projection, that the accusation is actually a confession, so I can validate what I know to be true, that they are actually the ones being controlling. And now it just sucks because they're still in karmic energy, and that might trigger my feelings of loneliness or disappointment that they're not where I had hoped they would be. But okay, I can see that. Now I can work on that. And then maybe you call it in again, like, okay, I want it again. And then you're choosing triggers intentionally, which already starts to change it. And each time you choose it and you decide to say, okay, I've been triggered, I've had my reaction, now I'm going to practice a different vibration than I used to before. Like for me, especially over this last year, I really wanted to challenge the spirit in which I did things. And so, like, say that I wanted to start dating. In the beginning, a lot of it was like, oh, I want to distract myself so that I'm not trying to pull at my twin too much and I can let him have his own experience. But then I also realized that part of me wanted to do it to make him jealous, and I didn't want to do that. And I mean, I had some people that were telling me, yeah, go for it. Like, do it this way, do it that way. And I had other people that said, yeah, go for it for you, but don't say anything about it because it might make him jealous. And then that'll really push him away because he's this type of person or that type of thing. And then I didn't want to then that triggered my fears of abandonment. I didn't want to do it for that reason. And then I went into challenging what's called fantasy bonds and putting him on a pedestal. And that actually enlightened me a lot more to the journey that we'd already had. And then things like communication. In the past, especially as a Capricorn with Scorpio placements, like when I don't talk to somebody, it's usually because I'm very upset with them, usually angry, and usually because they've done something that it feels like a betrayal to me. And I didn't want to release communication from my twin I didn't want to do it in a place of anger because well, with anybody else, it just would have been a cold cutoff. A lot of people talk about that with Capricorns. It just would have been done. And I didn't want to be that kind of person with anybody anymore, unless it was really, really necessary for my own, safety and sanity. And two, when it comes to my DM, he's like the one person that if I cut him off communication wise or any other way because I'm angry or upset, I don't hold it. I don't hold the boundary. And then it triggers all sorts of things for me. And so I said, this can't be the spirit to which that I do this in. And then I started to notice, oh, you know what? I'm only even doing this to teach him a lesson or to try to get him to respond to me. And it worked sometimes, but it was never in the energy that I wanted it to be in, and it never lasted. And then the minute that, say, he got wrapped up in karmic drama that had nothing to do with me, I took a self-worth hit. And that then I would end up triggering him and going off on him, and then he'd push me away for that, and we'd go through the same cycle again. So I started to look at the spirit to which I was pulling away in. Am I pulling away because I want a reaction from him, or am I pulling away because I'm enjoying my time? Am I pulling away because I recognize that he needs space or because I'd like some space? And each time that each thing came in, it got to the point to where, I mean, I've been very amused, especially over the last couple of months, because I've been easily able to diffuse any sort of accusations of me being controlling, going, yep, I'm Mrs. Controlly Pants. And what's wrong with that? I control myself. I control the vibration that I practice when I get triggered. I allow myself to be human. I allow myself to change when I want to be. And I allow myself to have boundaries. And I don't need him to validate them or be happy with them. I don't need other people to do it. And that is a form of control, but it's also a healthy, ascended form of control to where I am not taking self hits when somebody else does not agree with my boundaries or my life choices or what I might choose to say. And the funny thing is that that ended up helping to reflect to him without me needing to say it that he was actually the one being controlling and the one who was actually giving away exactly what was going on in his mind, how much he cared, how cruddy his situation was, and things like that. And I no longer needed to be the lesson teacher. And that really became a really profound change in our journey. And like, as the more I started to choose my own healing for my own self, the more he started to choose his own healing for his own self, and the less we ended up triggering each other unintentionally. And when triggers did happen, either they were unintention, or when they happened, both of us were able to recognize what happened and to both, reapproach each other in a healthier way, and to take those experiences into our own karmic situations. And to be able to say, oh, okay, like me with my family, I was able to correct a whole lot of things that were based on me being triggered. And he was able to do the same in his situation. He's still learning a fair amount of that, but like I say in some videos, sometimes we're right in step with each other, and sometimes we're off in timelines. I'm not worried about it anymore. I used to be worried about it. It used to trigger me. But each time that that happened, I looked at, what does this trigger mean for me? And then I started to actually realize that there's no reason to be afraid of triggers, and that there are moments when we should intentionally trigger someone. You actually get to the point to where you realize you don't have to do anything, but you can say, oh, okay, here's a moment where a trigger could occur. And it's not that you're going, I'm going to trigger that person. It's simply that you're going, I'm going to be myself. And I recognize that in the past, when I've been myself in this way, that it has triggered something. And you can go, okay, well, the only reason I wouldn't have been myself in the past is because I was worried about pushing him away, or I was worried about what other people might think. And if I'm no longer worried about the push or the pull, or the 3D existence of him, or our communication, nor what other people think, then it removes the power from it, and I can just be myself. And that became its own fun sort of validation, as I no longer worried about when a trigger occurred or did not occur, because he kept choosing me even after that. And that healed a lot of my fears of, what if he doesn't like the real me? Or what if, like, I accidentally hurt his feelings? Or what if in doing something that I know is right for me or right for us, it ends up triggering him, and he ends up getting reactive and pulling away? Like, that energy stopped happening so much. And when it did happen, I was not like on the floor in a fetal position going, oh my God, what have I done? And then trying to reach out to fix it and creating a whole new cycle. I just was able to go, all right, he's going to be quiet for a while. It's kind of adorable. I'll work on my own thing. And then he started choosing it more and more and more, started revealing more of his own feelings, started showing that he was doing the healing work too, and that I was no longer holding him back. Because a lot of times face when we don't just allow ourselves to be ourselves and not worry about how we'll get triggered or how others get triggered, when we allow ourselves to feel how we feel and then choose what that means and what vibration we will practice after the trigger, which we can always control that part. You can't always control the trigger, at least not until you've faced a lot of your shadow work, but you can always choose how you will practice feeling after a trigger. And it can be as simple as, whenever you're triggered, whether it's anger, sadness, anxiety, whatever, once you've gotten that out and you've had that feeling, or you've had your fit, or you've had your panic attack, and you say, I'm going to practice gratitude every time after I get triggered. I'm going to make lists of even absurd level things to be grateful for. I'm grateful for my shoelaces that keep my shoes on. I'm grateful for the socks that don't have holes in them. I'm grateful for the days that the dishwasher works wonderfully. I'm grateful for every little raindrop that falls and like cleans up parts of the yard. I'm grateful for the little bunnies that hop through the yard sometimes and remind me of my masculine. I'm grateful for the air that I breathe. I'm grateful for when a little eyelash falls off on my finger and I think, oh, I can make a wish on that. All of it. Like, just practice an attitude of gratitude every time after you're triggered, because you can control what happens after you're triggered. And when you start to practice gratitude rather than anxiety or anger, or continuing to build momentum in whatever feeling that you were originally triggered in, you start to change that. and then you don't get triggered so much anyways. And then when triggers do happen and you go through the human emotions, the the absurdity of how you feel about it, you can give yourself grace and you're not so worried about it. And then you become an example of how to do that to other people, which your masculine sees and also starts to feel and reflect. So it's important to sit down and look at your triggers. And what I recommend is that, get out your journal and start to look at what do you feel triggered about already? Is it, when's the last time you talked to your twin? Was it today? Was it a month ago? Was it 4 or 5 months ago, 12 months ago, 4 years ago? How do you feel about that? Because the amount of communication that you have, well, I shouldn't say the amount, the quality of communication that you have, because some people can have a wonderful and fantastic communication from their twin once a month, and it totally fulfills them for the next month. And some people can, only hear from them every few months a year and still feel really great, whereas others can have communication with them every day in some small way, and it still feels crappy. It doesn't feel good. So look at when's the last time that you had a conversation with your twin, and what was the quality of that communication, and how did it go? If it was good, but they didn't say, "Oh, baby, baby, I want you now, and I want union right now, and I'm totally done with all my karmic thoughts and people and things like that," but it was otherwise loving, do you feel disappointed that there wasn't more, that it wasn't like this full on, "Will you marry me" commitment? And if so, why? Why aren't you just comfortable as you are, enjoying your time, seeing how things unfold? And if it was a low vibration conversation where, they either tried to make you jealous, or even they were trying to impress you but it made you feel jealous, or they were talking about their karmic, or you were arguing about something, maybe about a co-parenting thing, what is it that felt triggering about that? And did you feel sad or mad or anxious or disappointed or frustrated? And why? Why does it pull on you in that way? And I'm not saying why in a judgmental way. I'm saying write down why. Like just why. To look at it from almost a detached perspective of why does this trigger me? Why am I not just comfortable with this? Why am I not just able to kind of giggle and go, that was funny? And don't don't be mean to yourself because you're not there yet. In fact, be proud of yourself, because if you're actually doing this, if you're following these absurdities that I'm suggesting that you do, you're already doing the work. You're already getting there. You're one step closer, even just thinking about doing it. And then practice that. And then practice looking at, why are you grateful for those triggers? Like, start there. Why are you grateful for this contrast? Why are you grateful for the times that your DM pisses you off? Why are you grateful that the karmics are in your life? Start practicing that, because that pulls you out of your own karmic energy and starts to help you heal. And the less triggered you get, trust me, the far more attractive you are if you are not easily triggered. And also, you're much less easily manipulated, either by your DM or by their karmics or by your karmics or family members, work, everything. And I think I'll end this with, if you are doing anything based on either your need to get your twin to come towards you, or because you are angry with your twin, or because you've hit a breaking point with your twin, that's a trigger. And if you're doing anything in the spirit of, well, I'm not going to give you my attention if you're going to be like that, or, well, if you want to be with me, you got to earn it, or, well, you just hurt me so many times that I just can't do it anymore. You're triggered. And not only are you not going to initiate healing and reconnection with your twin, but you're going to carry that energy into everything else that you do, which is the more important reason to heal this stuff. It's not to get your twin back. It's not to say, like, well, you just need to forgive the way they hurt you. No, if you don't work on healing that stuff, you will carry it into all other relationships. And that's often why, even if you get into union with your twin, and even if you're with them for a long time, even if you get married, if you and they, because you reflect each other, did not heal things that came from your childhood or came from your other relationships, you carry them into your relationships. And then that often creates separation. Or if you're in the earlier parts of your journey, it delays union, the actual union in there because you're still playing out all these things. And triggers are indications of unhealed wounds that you're going to continue to play out in your work life, in your family life, with you and your kids, or you and your parents, your friendships, things like that. So really, like, use this tower card energy to bring out enlightenment and to change and shake things up and build a new, stronger foundation for yourself by facing your triggers and learning to not be so triggered by being triggered. All right, well, I'm going to leave this here. Let me know if you have any questions below, or if when you practice this, let me know how it goes and we can help each other with it. Either way, until I see you, I'll see you.